Christians, my sister here says that she respectfully has to disagree with me regarding the 1,000-year reign as is cited in Revelation chapter 20, verse 4. Here's the thing. The 1,000-year period is described as the millennial reign or the 1,000-year reign. It is a kingdom where Christ rules and reigns. Now, in her perspective, which is the perspective of all dispensationalists, their perspective is that this is a future coming kingdom which will be on earth. It's important to understand that it is a kingdom. And she, like the dispensationalists, are all saying that this is the time where Christ is going to rule and reign on earth. So what they have to assume, and what we all have to assume if they're correct, is that, or the question that we should be asking is this: doesn't Christ rule and reign on earth right now? And the answer is an emphatic yes. But what did Jesus also say? In John 18:36 and in Luke 17:20, he says that his kingdom will not be a kingdom that you can look at, see, and touch. It is a spiritual kingdom. The kingdom she's talking about is a very earthly, visceral kingdom. One that can be seen, touched, and handled, and witnessed, and observed. But Jesus himself said his kingdom would not be one that can be seen or observed. So that in and of itself means that her interpretation, which is not unlike probably the majority of Protestant Christianity today would believe. And they would all be wrong. Jesus made it clear that is not the nature of his kingdom. If that were true, then the Pharisees and the Jews would have got it right. They just got the timing wrong when it comes to Christ. In other words, they wanted him to come to earth and be an earthly king like David. And they said that when he didn't get his way, he went to plan B and decided to go to the cross, which is silliness at the least. Absolute silliness. So the reality is this: Christ's kingdom we are in right now. Because if he's a ruler and if he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords right now, which he is, then that means we are in his kingdom right now. And the 1,000-year reign that Revelation talks about is symbolic of a reign and a rule that has an indefinite period of time that has not been specified to have as to when the end date is. If what she is saying is true, then here's what the implications are. We would know when Christ was going to return. If it is a literal 1,000 years, then from the time that the so-called tribulation ends, the tribulation period, which the Bible speaks nothing about, but dispensationalists and people like my friend here, they believe that right after the end of the tribulation, the 1,000-year millennial reign of Revelation 20, verse 4 is ushered in and is inaugurated and begins with Christ coming back to earth to rule and reign in his glorified body with glorified saints and angels to go to Jerusalem that we know of today in Israel. Jesus in his glorified body, glorified saints and angels ruling and reigning earth from Israel. While the rest of the world has people who have not been converted or glorified in different bodies. Imagine that scene on earth. We are in what Revelation 20 verse 4, when it talks about the 1,000 years, we are in that period right now. Christ set up his kingdom on earth when he came the first time. And that kingdom will continue to be built until he returns. And he will return when that kingdom has crushed all of its enemies. That is happening right now. That is not future. Read these verses on screen, and these verses right here alone tell you that what she's saying can't possibly be true. unless you're willing to believe that there are more than one kingdom. And if there's more than one kingdom that belongs to Christ, the assumption would have to be then, or the implications would have to be then, that one of his kingdoms failed and required the need of another one to be rebuilt. If any kingdom of Christ fails, how is that possible? How can Christ be defeated? How can a kingdom that he established and that he and his Father established, how can it come to an end unless he himself ends it? The kingdom that she talks about, she says the kingdom that she's talking about, and like dispensationalism believes, is that there's going to be a coming 1,000-year period where Christ is going to rule and reign on earth. And then the kingdom that is supposed to be perfect and upright and holy in all aspects is going to be upended by a release of Satan from his prison. Who's going to release him? Is Jesus going to come here on earth, set up an earthly kingdom, and then release Satan? Or is Satan going to defeat Christ in some kind of way, and Christ is going to allow Satan to come back to earth in her kingdom and ruin it again the way Adam allowed it to be ruined? There are so many directions that this implies that are not correct at all. But it starts with these verses, which describe the nature of the kingdom of Christ, as he describes it. He himself describes it. So if these are true, then her assumptions are completely wrong and at variance with the word of God. Be provoked, be persuaded.